everyone. My name is Yvonne Maxkin. I am the founder and chair of the channel community and the founder and CEO of Co-Cheer, a coaching and consulting practice, and also a channel community gold supporter. Welcome to the next episode of Smashing the Class Ceiling. In this series, I will be interviewing and showcasing some of the fantastic individuals in the channel who have all come from a low socio-economic background, but have gone to build incredibly successful careers. They'll be sharing their stories of how they have navigated the corporate corridors and smashed through that class ceiling. So without delay, I would like to welcome my very next guest, Kevin Donagy. That's it, right? Isn't it Kevin Donagy? Sorry, I don't want to upset you by getting your name wrong, Kevin. I'm so sorry. Kevin is a channel consultant and also does an incredible job as a channel buddy for the channel community. So thank you, Kevin, so much for agreeing to come on the show and share your story with us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Yvonne.
You're welcome. So, Kevin, we got to know each other through the launch of the channel community, and I think you were actually one of the first people to come forward and offer your services as a channel buddy. So thank you again for that. That was brilliant. However, we've never actually met in person, and it's only actually very recently I discovered that you are yourself from a low social economic background, and I actually don't know your story at all. So would you be so kind as to tell me where you grew up and talk to me about your early career?
Yes, certainly. Thanks very much, Yvonne. Yeah, I grew up in Edinburgh, which for most people that visit Edinburgh, there's the castle, there's the lovely Georgian architecture and great pubs and restaurants. I grew up on the outskirts of Edinburgh in a place called Saughton. For anyone that knows Edinburgh, that's where the prison is actually based. So when I introduced myself, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Saughton. Oh, the prison? Like, no, it's not the prison. But it was, yeah, it was a council estate built in the 60s. So four blocks in either side, and it was a two-bedroom council house. I grew up there with my mum and dad and two elder sisters. And the way that I look at it, you know, most kids growing up these days had a big garden. We had a huge garden. We had the run of the council estate growing up during the 70s. And yeah, that's where life started for me.
So what about your early career then? What did that look like for you?
My early career, I left school. I went to the local high school where I lived, and IT was just being introduced into schools. And of course, like a lot of kids, you know, it was great to get your hands on it, especially if the teachers let you play games on it. So I discovered a course, an HND course in a college just about 50 miles south of Edinburgh, which was a residential college. So you could actually go in and stay there, which I did from the age of 18 for a couple of years. Stayed there for about 3 years and did a sort of combined technology and marketing course, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then a few of my friends had jumped on the train to go down south. In the 80s, you were always encouraged to head down south if you want if you want perhaps a career and opportunities. And that's what I did. I followed them down and landed in Southampton with no job, nowhere to stay. And one of the very first jobs I went for was for a networking distribution company in Southampton. And
Wow.
they were looking for someone to look after the Scottish clients and develop them. So I had the Scottish accent. I could talk about Scottish football. I understood IT and networking, and I quite liked chatting. So, you know, for them, it was I was a perfect guy, and that was my introduction into IT back in 1990.
Wow. And I mean, you say go south. You couldn't get further south, could you?
Well, no, I
Going from
think France,
Scotland to
yeah,
Southampton?
Isle of Wight or France
Oh,
would
maybe. Yeah.
be the next one. But you know, I had the confidence that there was about 3 or 4 of my friends already settled in Southampton and living in various different working different industries. So I had that sort of comfort blanket that my friends were down there. So what was there to lose in jumping on that bus?
Brilliant. Love it. And it's just having that, perseverance and grit to go down and make that decision, because not everybody has the courage to do it. It's quite a brave decision, right?
It is. It's a lot easier when you're 21 as opposed to,
Yes.
40, 45 or a little bit older. And, it was a new adventure as well. I'd grown up in Edinburgh. Wanted to move away somewhere different. It took me a while to adjust to the difference in heat, must admit, though, because Southampton's a little bit warmer than Edinburgh is. So that took a while. But now we had a fantastic time down there for a couple of years, and yeah, falling into the IT industry, I was like, wait a minute, you get paid a decent amount of money. They'll take you away on trips. If you sell certain stuff, they'll give you more money. I thought, wow, I never knew jobs like this actually existed.
And that's an interesting point, because I think when you grow up in those sorts of environments that we have, you're just not exposed to the same opportunities that other people are from different areas. So even, the north-south divide has a big impact on that, because a lot of the opportunities are in the south. And unless you make that transition down, then you won't get those opportunities, but you certainly wouldn't be aware of them from coming from somewhere like Edinburgh if you
Yeah,
were from a disadvantaged background, that's for sure. So
well,
you actually went straight into the channel then?
I did my very first full-time job was in the channel, and it was great fun. It really was, and it's very typical, of a sales role back in the sort of early 90s. So there's your list of potential customers, and as we know, if you work in distribution, you're quite privileged because these people are buying, but they might not be buying from you; they're buying from somewhere else. It's a lot harder than the partners and resellers that we work with. So you're just given a list of phone numbers, and there you go. Call them up, tell them who you are, why you'd like to speak to them, and see if you can get an opportunity to get some business. So yeah, I was incredibly green at that point, and I must admit I did play quite strongly on the Scottish card when
Brilliant.
calling, and very quickly, as you know, Yvonne, you start to build relationships, and yet you have a chat, whether it's about what you did at the weekend, the football, where are you going on your holidays. You build that relationship, and then you build the rest of the skills that you need behind that to start hitting your targets.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great industry to be in, and sales is a great career as well. So what do you think the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
That's a very, very good question. Growing up on a council estate in Edinburgh, you're not exposed to other sides of life as you might be if you grow up in a privileged area. But one advantage I did actually have when I was growing up, in Scotland, in the major cities, you get state schools, which are known as non-denominational schools, but you also get Catholic high schools as well. And
Hmm.
they were a great sort of mixing environment. So you could be sat in a class with, I'm the kid living in a 2-bedroom council flat, and sat next to me is a kid who lives in a 5-bedroom mansion. But they've got a Catholic background, so you got to meet so many different people from different backgrounds, became friends with them as well, and that perhaps gave me an insight into there's more to life than what I've been exposed to previously.
So gave you your first aspirations, really. I think a bit
It
like
it,
private
it did.
education without the cost associated with it.
Well, it is, when you're going to school, and whatever your mum could buy from C&A or British Home Stores. And for any young kids watching these are old stores that we used to go to for school clothes. We didn't have Primark in those days. You're wearing the very cheap shoes, and the guy next to you is wearing the expensive Adidas trainers, or he's talking about he's got a color TV in his room and his own video recorder. And it's like, we only got color TV a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not of any sort of religion, but I got exposed to a very similar sort of background of people, I suppose, when I started playing tennis at the age of 6. And all of a sudden I realized that I was quite different from them. I turned up in like clothes from the market, and they were all wearing designer tennis gear, and they had tennis rackets that were actually made for them, their size. I went there with my mum's old wooden racket, which was basically the same size as me. But I think being in that environment and being around people from a different class that have got more money and stuff like that does sort of give you that early aspiration to want to do more, I think. So It's quite an advantage, like you said.
Yeah, it can do. And, I was very fortunate growing up, had a great childhood growing up. And we were one of the few families where I lived on the estate where actually, would go away for summer holiday. The majority of kids didn't go away. So for us, it was, staying with family in Leeds. But we were still going away. And then, through school and later on through college, yeah, you meet people who are, who are perhaps, have had fantastic opportunities. They go to Spain on their holidays with their family, and it opened up, a view to there's more to life, and how do I potentially get that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, what has been your proudest moment of your career, and why is that?
Um, I had a very good think about this, and whilst you can look at progression that you've made in organisations, big deals that you've won, fantastic trips, as we know that very privileged in the channel community, and this isn't a setup, I can assure you, but helping other people within the channel environment, it's something that I've always done. I'm a great believer that if you go up, a couple of floors in the elevator, be sure to send it back down again and help people. So even before I got involved in the channel community, one of my previous roles, I would spend time with people that wanted to know how to develop their career. I had been involved in a mentoring program where I was the mentee and I had a mentor. With one of the large SIs, and I found that incredibly beneficial to my career. And when I look back, I've always had people that perhaps took me under their wing, that perhaps saw something that I didn't see in myself. So the ability to then turn that around and act as an unofficial mentor for people in my workplace, that's given me the greatest privilege. And the day I saw on LinkedIn that you were launching the channel community, that's probably why I was one of the first. I thought, yes, that's it. That gives me a formal environment in which to actually try and help nurture
Yeah.
people that they're at the start of their careers.
No, which is fantastic. And like you said, I think there's a consistent theme about from the people that I've spoken to already. It's about their enjoyment of about paying it forward because they're so appreciative of what they've had. And also the value that they've personally had from not just mentorship, but sponsorship. I think with the consistent theme is there's always been someone that spotted something in you that you didn't necessarily see yourself. So we talk about mentorship quite openly, but sponsorship has also been very important. It's exposing yourself to different people that can sort of bring out the best in you without you realizing it.
Yes,
So,
no,
and
no,
I know, sorry,
yeah,
go on, Kevin.
yeah, that's incredibly important. And you know, there's so many people that we've worked with, and in our position as potential mentors, you're drawn to people that are perhaps a little bit similar to how you were 10,
Yeah.
20 years ago as well. And yeah, and you do hone in on them. So yeah, just the ability to help other people with their career, not necessarily give them all the answers, as we know that's not exactly what mentoring is, but encouraging them and supporting them. Yeah, I love doing that.
No, and I know you're doing a fantastic job with your mentee. So again, thank you very much for that. How do you think that coming from a low social economic background has impacted your career, either positively or negatively?
Yeah, another very good question. I didn't really give it much thought as my career was progressing. I just thought, right, I've got a job to do. I'll build my team. I'll, go out and hit targets. Make sure I got the incentives that I wanted, and the trips that I wanted. You soon begin to realize that perhaps outside of the work, there's people who have got a slightly different friend group or a social economic group as well, and perhaps they've had access to things that you haven't. Has it restricted my career? I've certainly been in environments where people who have been to the right school, perhaps stick together, and it's very hard to break into those groups. And yeah, you do see some of those getting on quite well. But I think within our industry, because it's still a relatively new industry, Car manufacturing has been around for 120 years, finance been around for hundreds of years. Our industry is relatively new. So I actually think that, regardless of your background, we've all had an opportunity to progress perhaps a bit faster than we would have within a traditional industry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I do think, though, some of that is becoming more challenging than it was when our generation. I think we were very fortunate for our generation, just because of the fact that there were more opportunities and it was less dependent on your upbringing or your background. If you're a salesperson, you're a good salesperson, irrespective of the technology or your knowledge around the tech or whatever. But whereas I think what we're seeing is, which is why there's this only 9% of people from the tech industry come from a low social economic background, is because a lot of the apprenticeships that were available, say that I did a YTS, are now being taken up by some of the more privileged individuals that have gone to well-educated, privileged schools, but are just deciding not to go to university. So I think the talent pool, I think it's harder for the youngsters now than it was for us. That's what we're seeing as well. It's sort of the problem is getting pushed further down the stack, and it's something that we just need to be a bit more mindful of. Distribution, however, I don't think that there is an issue, but I can see it in some of the large vendors, certainly, and in some of the resellers as well. There's some,
Yeah, well, I certainly know, going back quite a few years, and it might still be the case, to get into a vendor at the early stages, you go through the graduate program. So you're expected to have a degree. You're expected to be, perhaps this, very outgoing, sociable, go to the right sports clubs. So there's definitely a barrier to entry for those organizations that have a graduate program, because we know there's a lot of talented people out there that either perhaps didn't have the grace to go to university, or didn't want to go to university. University isn't for everybody. They wanted to get into the workplace, and I'm certainly aware of a number of organizations that will do. You can do your degree, but for earn at the same time. You spend 4 days a week in the office, and then 1 day a week you're doing your degree. So yeah, I'm a great believer in identifying the talent and nurturing it first, wherever it comes from.
No, absolutely. And knowing what you know now and what you've achieved in your career, what would you say to a younger version of yourself?
Very good question. Build your team. You may think you're a superstar hitting your targets all the time, but you're only doing it because you've got a team around you. You absolutely need to build that team. The old adage in sales, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. Listen more than you speak. And also, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it.
I love that. Brilliant. And what support and help do you think companies could do to help more individuals from a low social economic background?
I'll perhaps go back to the mentoring aspect. If you come from a low social economic background, you're more likely to build a relationship with someone in senior management that perhaps has trodden that path as well. It'd be very hard for me on day one to spend time with someone who went to Eton or Harrow, because they're completely worlds apart. There's not a lot we'd have in common. So certainly, if you're running a mentoring or sponsorship program, try and match people up that have put some of those perhaps synergies in their upbringing.
That's a great advice. Yeah, I think something else that's been quite common across these chats that I've been having is that it's almost something that people have hidden because they've been embarrassed. And but the more mature and sort of more experienced and older you get, actually you shouldn't be ashamed of where you've come from. Be proud and don't hide, because if people don't know, you can't be what you can't see. So if we're trying to constantly hide the fact that this is where we've come from, we're not going to aspire those individuals that are there now to, that they can achieve anything. So just
Yeah,
be,
you're absolutely right.
just be
Yeah,
proud,
yeah, I'm incredibly proud. I know people that, when you ask them where they're from, they might tell you the general area, or pick, perhaps the street across the road, which might have been a nicer area. I'm incredibly proud to say that I came from Stockton in Edinburgh. If you've seen Train Spotting, it's not quite Train Spotting, but it's not too far away. And yeah, I look back on my childhood, and yeah, we had a fantastic time. You don't know what you're missing, do you, growing up as a kid?
absolutely. Again, something that's been very common. You only know what you know. And
Yes.
you just surround yourself with the same people from your, the same environment. That's all you know until you get exposed to something different.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, absolutely. So my final question for you, Kevin,
Mhm.
is what one piece of advice would you give to someone from a low social economic background who is trying to navigate a career in the channel?
The one piece of advice is try and find that one person that can help you, whether they're in the company you're working for, whether it's in education, whether it's any sports or community groups. Try and find that one person, and don't be afraid to ask for help either, or advice. As soon as you realize that you have an opportunity to learn from someone who's perhaps trodden a different path. And if you ask for advice, I know you would offer it, I'd offer it, so many people in our community would offer it. So yeah, yeah. As a good Geordie friend of mine says, shy bairns getting out. If you don't ask, you don't get. And coming from sales, you might not always get a yes, but just give it a shot.
Well, if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that, Kevin. Kevin, you have well and truly smashed the class ceiling. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story.
Thank you very much for allowing me to, and keep up the fantastic work in the channel community as well.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Take care.
Thank you.